Yesterday, we discussed the concept of mercantilism, an economic system in which governments try their best to raise profits in a country. Today, we're going to discuss another important economic system, the concept of capitalism. The United States functions as a country based on the concepts of capitalism. On this page, I have a quote from Ludwig von Mises, who says, "If history could teach us anything, it would be that private property is inextricably linked with civilization." Basically, the idea of ownership is tied to our ability to be a culture. Today, we're going to talk about how that relates to the concept of capitalism. Yesterday, we discussed the concept of mercantilism. Mercantilism dominated world trade theory. What it taught was that governments sought to maximize their trade profits, or sought to make sure they sold more things than they bought, or the things they sold for more money than what they paid for. But it was regular people owning things that fueled trade, regular people buying things that led to an increased trade, not just the fact that the government wanted to increase trade. People wanted to buy things, wanted to buy stuff, and so businesses made sure they had the items available. Here I've got a picture of a woman buying things at a grocery store. When people are buying things in a grocery store, they sell them. When people stop buying specific items, the stores stop selling them. A couple of years ago, I really liked Italian chicken. And every grocery store in Rock Hill was selling Italian chicken. It was already prepared. All you did was go home and cook it. And then apparently people stopped buying it, and so suddenly you couldn't buy pre-Italian marinated chicken. And I had to start marinating my own, and I'm not a chef by any stretch, so you wouldn't want to eat my marinated chicken. Buy things, stores will have them. The winds of change, though, hadn't stopped. We talked about mercantilism developed out of the Age of Exploration and how things had changed so much from the Middle Ages. Change was still occurring. As changes occurred during the 17 and 1800s, merchants began to realize that they were taking all the risk. It wasn't some king in some country pushing for business. It was merchants actually going out and working that was making all the money. They were taking the risk of fighting off pirates that might come and attack their boats. They were running the risk of their boats getting caught in storms and getting lost at sea, or running aground and being shipwrecked. They also realized they were the people making the money, though. It wasn't some king suddenly becoming wealthy off of trade, it was the merchants themselves. And so merchants and other types of businessmen, like bankers and things of that sort, began to form a growing middle class in Europe. At the beginning of the year, we talked about how locally we're all part of a lower middle class or middle class mindset. This concept owes its roots to this time period when a middle class finalized and has been around ever since. Different cultures had had the concept, but it never seemed to last. The growing middle class began to lead to a development in regular people opening regular businesses that they owned. No longer were there defined jobs that you had to be a shoemaker or you had to be a farmer. Instead, everybody got to begin to look and decide what they wanted to do, and they could open businesses, stores, doing what they wanted to sell or doing what they wanted to do. You might open a store where you built beds and built furniture. Somebody down the street may decide that they just like to clean up and they could clean houses. If any of y'all decide that y'all like to clean houses, let me know. I'll be glad to tell you some houses that need cleaning. Mine's number one. I would love to work in a shop where I sold collectibles, comic books, video games, things of that sort. And there are stores like that today. There couldn't have been a store like that, though, before the development of the middle class. The idea that regular people did work that they wanted to do, not what somebody told them to do. This concept created the market economy. When regular people buy and regular people sell, and they exchange goods and services, you develop a market economy. I go down to Walmart, I buy something. That's a market economy. No one tells me I have to do that. No one tells Walmart it has to sell the item I want. That's a market economy. Some countries, the government says, you know what, this store is going to sell shoes, that store is going to sell bread. If you want to buy shoes, you have to go to this store to buy it. If you want to buy bread, you have to go to this store. A market economy says no, each business will decide what it wants to sell, and each shopper will decide which businesses to go to. I want everybody to pause for a second if you're listening to this, and I want you to think about a country that we know allows regular people to go and buy and sell where they want to. Hopefully, lights are going off and bells are ringing and children are singing and your parents are saying, hey, that's us, because that's us. The creation of a market economy was the final piece of the puzzle that led to the creation of a capitalistic society. Capitalism is the type of economic system that we have in the United States. Mercantilism was one piece, the idea that governments would try to help businesses make money. Governments would realize they needed to make more money than they spent. The establishment of global trade, bringing ideas and goods and thoughts from around the world together, was another piece. The development of a middle class where people could actually afford to go and buy their own things and have the money to buy the things they wanted, not necessarily the things they need, was another essential piece. But this idea of a market economy where businesses could sell what they wanted to sell and people could buy what they wanted to buy was the final piece. Suddenly, we had the concept of capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system where regular people own the means of producing things and creating things and selling those things for money. We're a capitalistic country. In America, people are free to conduct business as they see fit. Stores sell what they want to sell. People go and buy stuff they want to buy. Now, over the 300 years America's been around, 250 years America's been around, there have been some rules set in order for how this would work. I personally think less rules are better. Some people think more rules are better. Got a picture here of Uncle Sam. He's like the stereotypical American guy. And the picture that normally is supposed to say, I want you, and it's an army thing. Instead, it says, I want you to buy crap. And a lot of people think that's what capitalism's all about. It's just people going out and buying things. But in its most basic thing, it's just the fact that you have the freedom to go out and buy those things. I like Italian food. I want to be able to go out and buy Italian food. I have a place in Rock Hill called Luigi's that I love to go on like a weekly basis and have a big, yummy calzone. There are some countries that say, no, that calzone, we don't want Italian food. We want this type of food. But we live in a country where I can go get a calzone when I want to and where I want to. I like that freedom. One thing I really loved talking about in 6th grade were the philosophers. I love religion. I love philosophy. I love talking about how people think and why people think the things they think. In 7th grade, we don't get to talk about really fun, exciting philosophers like Buddha or like Jesus or like the Greek philosophers Socrates and Plato. I think those are some of the most exciting guys in history, but we do get to talk about some philosophers and things they do. Adam Smith is one of the earliest philosophers we talk about in 7th grade. He was an economic philosopher. He talked about how economics works and why economics works. He wrote several famous books on the concepts of capitalism. His most famous book is called The Wealth of Nations, and it's about how countries make money and why capitalism is a good idea. In the next few weeks, we're going to talk about several other philosophers, and most of them are going to be political philosophers, talking about how governments work and why governments should work one way or the other. All of these different philosophers are going to help establish the American way of life. Adam Smith helped the American founding fathers see that capitalism is the best type of economic system for a large country, probably. Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations.